What's going on, guys? Darius Benton here, and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I uploaded a reaction video, but I recently bought a new house, and I've been kind of going through my move, making sure everything was all moved in here and everything was pretty much good to go. But I'm back now, back to my reaction videos, and today we're gonna be reacting to something a little different than what I usually do. Lately, I've been killing watching cave exploring gone wrong. I know it's kind of crazy. I don't know why, but I've been really intrigued by it lately. So I thought, you know what? Why not get a live reaction of me actually watching it? Because I actually think they're pretty interesting. But at the same time, it's like, why would you put yourself in that like predicament? You know what I mean? It makes no sense to me. But I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below if you guys ever tried caving or wanted to try it, or you're just like a hard no. You know what I mean? But yeah, this is about a family that kind of went to explore a cave and didn't work out very well for them. But if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. And yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into a video.
A day of cave exploring for a group of Boy Scouts was planned to be a challenging and educational adventure. When an unexpected encounter with a 5-inch fissure throws the plan into chaos, they could never have expected the deadly consequences of this unbelievable stroke of bad luck. This is the fatal breakdown of the Crooked Swamp caving tragedy. It was March 27, 1982, and Donald Weltner was excited about the adventure he had planned for the day. He and his two sons, Christopher and Roger, were going to be leading a Boy Scout group in a day of cave exploration. As a scoutmaster, Donald had taken his scout troop on several caving activities over the past year, so they knew the kind of day that lay ahead. The family met up with the
I guess too, being in 1982, I guess there wasn't really too many safety regulations regarding caving, and I guess I don't know. I feel like people didn't understand the real dangers of it. But yeah. Anyway, let's just see.
scoutmaster, who would be teaming up with Donald for the day. In total, they had 12 boys to look after, and would set the group rules right away. They needed to stay together in the main rooms, never leave their buddy while looking around, and only attempt
Yeah, we all know
passages
that's not
that had
gonna
been
happen.
cleared by the scoutmasters. The passages of the Crooked Swamp cave system in New Jersey were notoriously narrow, but Donald and Jim weren't too worried. The boys were all much smaller than the two men, so they would lead the way for any exploration. If they
That's
could make
ridiculous.
it, then the boys could too. Maps of this cave show many narrow passages with low ceilings.
Like, guys, look how tight that is. Like, why would you want to put your body through that? Like, that's insane. Like, it's kind of giving me claustrophobic, and I'm not in there. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
Where the clearance is only 1 foot. Some of the scouts were pretty excited about squeezing through these tough sections, while others were feeling more nervous about the claustrophobic conditions.
Yeah,
Donald
that'd be
had
me.
taken several groups out to similar caves, so he knew the different responses that the kids might have to such conditions, and he and Jim were prepared to help everyone have a safe experience. After hiking out to the cave, the entrance was quite unassuming. If you didn't know what you were looking for, you would probably walk right past it. The opening was only 16 inches high and 28 inches wide, so if you were feeling unsure about tight squeezes, this would certainly be the first test for each person in the group.
Yeah, if I actually seen that, I would not be going in. Forget that. I like my life way too much. Way too much. Actual entrance to Crooked Swamp Cave. That's insane.
It was 2 o'clock on that Saturday when they entered the cave. The main path to the first room was relatively large for this cave system. The room height was between 8 and 11 feet high. This gave enough breathing space for the boys to spread out a little in an area that was around 300 square feet, with a few larger paths leading off of this room. Donald was on the east end of the room, and Jim was supervising the west side. There were several smaller tunnels leading off from the main room, but the men weren't sure which were known paths, and which would have been too small to navigate. Donald decided to check a tunnel that might connect to the next section of the cave system. He planned to check it out to confirm that it would be a good one for the scouts to try. Donald was fairly slim at 5 feet
5'11".
11 inches tall, weighing 160 pounds.
That's not bad.
His two sons followed close behind him to report back if he was able to get through to a bigger room or join the next cave system. Donald was familiar with the stress of a tight squeeze, so he was prepared to push through a narrow spot in order to arrive in an interesting opening of the cave. He pulled himself along in a fairly tight area.
I'm not sure if this is the actual footage of them, or maybe this is different guys in the same cave doing it and just showing it. But that's crazy though. Like pushing your bodies. Like, why would you get a thrill by doing that? Why when you can potentially get stuck? It must be like the adrenaline junkies, but still, like that's insane, guys. Like that's insane.
Was 18 inches by 20 inches. It wasn't so tight that he couldn't move along, but he was restricted from moving his arms back, and he couldn't lift his head well to see ahead. The tunnel was covered with slick mud, and it helped
So
Donald
you wanna
slide
keep on
forward
going
when things were
forward?
tight. He
Wow.
reported back to his sons as he moved along. The path he was following turned to the right, so he reached out to pull himself along, when he suddenly felt the ground disappear below him as he slid down into a tight crevice. The slippery mud made it impossible to catch himself and stop the out-of-control slip. It wasn't that he fell a great distance, it was only a few feet below the main path, but this keyhole-shaped tunnel narrowed into a tight wedge at the bottom.
Oh,
Donald yelled out to his
no.
sons to stop while he assessed his situation. His arms were trapped down at his sides, so he couldn't find a way to leverage himself back up. The path angled down 30 degrees, which had gravity working
Hold on, guys. I gotta go back. Sorry.
to himself
1 second.
back up.
Like, look at that. You're telling me who wouldn't freak out over that? There's nowhere to go. Like, literally, nowhere to go.
The path
Like, where are
angled
you
down
going?
30 degrees, which had gravity working against him. The slippery mud caused his body to settle more and more into the tiny 5-inch wide crevice at the bottom of the passage.
5 inch wide.
Each time he tried to push himself backwards, the rocks seemed to tighten around his body. It only took a few minutes to figure out that he wouldn't be able to get himself out alone. He asked Christopher to grab his feet and try to pull him backwards. He thought that with a little assistance, he could free his arm and reach back to grab one of the jagged rocks he'd passed. Christopher struggled to get a grip on his dad's muddy shoes in the tight confines of the tunnel. After several attempts by Donald and the boys to free him from the wedge, he told them to back out of the tunnel and get Scoutmaster Jim. They were certainly feeling the stress of the situation, but were confident that an adult would be able to help their dad out of this crack. Jim made his way into the restrictive tunnel and found the exposed legs of Donald sticking out of a turn in the passage. He was angled down at a 30-degree angle, which made it really hard to pull him out of the trap. Each time Jim pulled his legs, Donald could feel the cave tighten around his body.
Ooh.
As Jim released his legs, the pressure eased and he slid forward back into the crevice. After some back and forth efforts, Jim realized he would need help to get Donald free. Jim was barely able to reach the area where Donald was stuck, since the tunnel squeezed down to just 18 inches in this area. It seemed unreal that his friend had just crawled forward into this tight spot,
Right?
but now couldn't back out. Donald explained that
Like, guys, if you want to go caving, like, be cautious. You know what I mean? Like, if you see a very, very, very tight crevice, who's to say that it's not gonna get tighter and tighter and tighter the further you go in? You know what I mean? So, like, if any of you guys are cavers, let me know in the comment section below. But if you guys are cavers, just be careful out there, cause man, this is a horrible way to go. Absolutely horrible.
some rocks had loosened when he slid, and it seemed that they were wedging against his body. Each time Jim pulled him back toward the passage, the rocks slid forward and blocked the exit hole, squeezing Donald's body in the process. This was not a situation that the two men would be able to fix on their own. Pulling backwards was only pushing Donald into an impossibly narrow squeeze, and there was no way for Donald to move forward, because he was pressed against the tunnel walls, which had narrowed to 5 inches just beyond his head. Donald was stunned to find himself in this position.
Like, looking at that,
Jim
it's
backed
giving
out of
me,
the tunnel
it's
and
making me
called for help.
claustrophobic.
It had been nearly 3 hours since Donald had become stuck, and he had not moved an inch. The police put out the call for cave rescue specialists to assist in the tight tunnels. This wasn't the kind of space where a team of people could move in and rescue a stuck caver. The tunnel that Donald was stuck in was just big enough for one person to reach his feet at a time. The rescue teams got to work trying to rig up some ropes to pull him out of the tight passage. Even with the additional pull of several people, it only caused Donald to become more wedged under the ledge and rock, keeping him trapped. The rescuers couldn't reach the rock that was blocking the path, and Donald's hands were trapped by his body in the narrow fissure he had slid into. Once they realized that pulling would not free him, they brought in the chisels and small jackhammers to try to move out some larger pieces of rock.
I was just thinking that, like, I know it'll probably make the cave unstable, but try chipping it away little bits by bits to make the patches a little bigger so you can slip through. But like, oh my god, my heart's like boom, 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 boom. Like I would never in my life put myself in this position. No, I could never.
This was painstaking work in the cramped space, with little progress to show for hours of work. Groups of 2 moved in and out of the passage to reach Donald and try to warm his body with a heat lamp and warm water bottles around his legs. They talked with Donald to assure him that they were going to find a way to free him. He felt completely helpless without the use of his arms, and stuck under a rock that had broken free from the ceiling of this tunnel. Donald was cold and thirsty, but no one could reach his upper body to help alleviate his suffering. He asked them to call his wife and let her know he would be late tonight. The minutes and hours ticked by slowly for Donald, while he thought about how he got into this situation. It's hard to grasp the isolation he must have felt in that small pocket of space. Completely immobilized, physically trapped in every way possible.
And honestly, guys, I think the picture is not really doing justice as how bad this crevice can actually be. Like, imagine that, having rocks all surrounding you, can't go forward, can't go backwards, your arms are glued to your side pretty much, can't move, and you're just there. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard not to panic. Like, it's, I don't know, it's one of those things that it's kind of like, I may not make it out of this alive, you know? It's just a horrible way to go, guys. I couldn't even imagine what was going through his head.
While being able to freely think, breathe, and talk. It was a frustrating nightmare that seemed to drag on and on. Cavers who knew the system well were aware that the other cave met this tunnel just near where Donald was stuck. They entered from the other side and explored until they found a passage that led directly to this tiny tunnel. But only the smallest cavers could squeeze into this passage. 2 sisters who joined the rescue effort were exactly what was needed to reach Donald. Lynn and Nancy Taylor were experienced cavers whose parents had led the way through a lifetime of cave exploration. They were also members of the National Cave Rescue Commission. They were 24 and 25 years old, but their size was the most important advantage they brought to this situation. Nancy was 5 foot 2 inches, weighing 105 pounds, and Lynn was 5 feet tall and weighed only 86 pounds. Lynn used her tiny frame to wiggle
Wow,
through the
that's
extremely
crazy.
small passages in Cave 2. She reached the area where they linked together, but it was a mere 5 inches wide in this location. Reaching as far as she possibly could, she was unable to reach Donald's head. It was a winding, cramped little opening that kept her about 2 feet away from reaching him. They were devastated to see that reaching him from that side was not going to be possible. This left the rescue team unable to offer him warm water or nourishment of any kind. Clearly, the timeline for a rescue just got shorter. All through Saturday night, they tried one way and then another to free him. But it was clear, Donald would not be pulled back out, nor moved forward. They would have to try something else. Knowing that time was limited, they called in a different kind of rescue team. They started digging, hoping to break through to the part of the tunnel where Donald was stuck. It took the entire...
I was thinking that too, like, dig kind of above his head, but at the same time, it makes it unstable and it could have a collapse in the cave. But that's smart. Dig down, make the patches way a little bigger, and pull him up.
day on Sunday to get close to the right depth. Unfortunately, they were about 12 feet away from the target tunnel.
Oh,
They continued to
no.
try to reach him by digging laterally to find a way to connect to the passage. By Sunday night, he had been trapped for 36 hours in a downward angle position.
With no food
It was
or
only
water.
57 degrees inside the caves, and attempting to keep him warm was a serious challenge. Up to this point, they had been using a heat pump to blow warmer air toward him, and some hot water bottles touching his legs where he was exposed. This was the best they could do, since a very limited portion of his body was exposed on their end. Unfortunately, This air heat is no match for the cold stone that was pressed against his body. The risk of exposure and hypothermia is greatly increased in situations where cavers are touching the rock surface. Late on Sunday, at nearly 2 o'clock in the morning, they heard grunting responses from Donald. They knew that he was suffering from hypothermia, but he was still alive. This inspired the rescue team to redouble their digging efforts to reach his tunnel. By Monday morning, they were getting close, but encountered extremely difficult bedrock areas that were impossible to simply dig through. They were starting to think that Donald might not survive this effort. It had been nearly 2 days of being trapped, with no food, no water, and constant cold exposure. A nurse was sent down the main tunnel with a handheld Doppler machine and EKG to determine Donald's status. She was unable to get a pulse with either instrument, but she only had access to his cold legs below the knee. It would not be a 100% confirmation of whether he was still hanging on or not, because the core organs can still function long after the extremities have stopped registering a pulse. Knowing that the situation had just become more dire, they moved to use the most extreme methods available, including dynamite and a backhoe. It was risky.
Hold on, dynamite. They use dynamite in these situations? That's just crazy. Oh my god.
But if they didn't get to him
Dynamite.
quickly, there was absolutely no chance of his survival. On Tuesday morning, they had finally reached his location, and a doctor was sent down to confirm what was long suspected. Donald Weltner had died. He just could not survive 72 hours in these extreme conditions. The team continued their work to recover his body, though this would not be a simple task. Once they actually reached his location, it still took an entire day to recover his body. The passages were jagged, and the ropes and slings were not a simple lift to get him free. The 150-person rescue team put in a heroic 80-hour effort to rescue Donald Weltner. Despite their best efforts, the freakish nature of this accident prevented Donald from escaping the grip of the cave. His autopsy later confirmed that he died of hypothermia and exposure sometime between Sunday night and Monday morning. He survived these grueling conditions for at least 36 hours, and maybe as long as 48 hours. After Donald's death, the cave system was locked for limited access. A conservancy group now only allows access to groups who meet 2 requirements. They must be experienced cavers and have membership in a recognized caving organization.
Guys, that was absolutely insane and horrible. Like, the fact that he went through so much suffering and died at the end, like it makes you like, why would you want to put yourself in that position knowing you got family and especially having your kids with you? Like, come on. But I guess, like I said, those adrenaline junkies, they get off on that. But like I said, if any of you guys watching this video is a cave exploration or likes exploring caves, just just be careful. All right, just be careful. But if you guys enjoyed that video, give it a big thumbs up. And let me know in the comment section what you guys want to see next. If you guys want to see more of these videos, let me know because, like I said, I'm here for you guys. I want to make sure I give you guys the best content possible. You know what I mean? So, like I said, if you made it this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the support you guys been showing. And I'll see you guys in another video. Peace.